Yes?
I want to speak to the brigade commander. I want to speak to Colonel Njoku.
May I know who is speaking?
My name is Gowan, Yakubu Gowan.
Ranka Dede, this is Yakubu Danjuma.
Yakubu, what are you doing there? Where are you?
I am in the State House, sir.
Where is the brigade commander?
He is not around.
Have you heard what happened in Abeokuta?
Yes, I heard, sir. That is why I am here. We are about to arrest the Supreme Commander. The alternative is that the Igbo boys who carried out the January coup will be released. Tit for tat, since we killed their own officer.
Good Lord. Can you do it?
Yes, sir. We have the place surrounded, sir.
Alright. But for goodness sake, we have had enough bloodshed. There must be no bloodshed.
We are only here to arrest him, sir. There will be no bloodshed.
Good.
The first signs of trouble within the rank and file of the army became obvious at the infamous 4th Battalion, Ibadan. The northern soldiers here were probably most angry and hurt at the January coup, especially because their present battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Abogo Lagama, was killed along with the former commander, Colonel Coup Mohammed. Lagama had commanded the battalion for 3 consecutive years and was extremely popular with the northern soldiers. The situation got even more heated when the Igbo Deputy Battalion Commander, Major Mark Nzefili, took command of the battalion following Lagama's death. The northern soldiers refused to take orders from the new battalion commander and chased their Igbo colleagues out of the barracks. General Ronsi had to replace Major Nzefili with another northern officer, Major Joe Akahan, just after 4 weeks to forestall any further tension in the barracks. The same scenario played out in the Kano Bay's 5th Battalion, where Major Mohammed Shua was brought in to replace Igbo Major David Okafo. Despite the attempts by Agui Ronsi to pacify the northern soldiers, the soldiers remained in near mutinous states, and many openly voiced their intention to avenge their murdered colleagues in the January coup. Some of the prominent young officers who later rose to prominence from the 4th Battalion include Lieutenants Jerry Hussaini, Tunde Idiagbon, Maman Vata, Abdullahi Sheleng, Ibrahim Baku, Mohammed Maguru, and Yohana Madaki, among others. The soldiers complained bitterly that no one had properly explained to them what had happened to their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Lagama, and that they were being forced to serve under a new commander who was unfamiliar to them. Lieutenant Colonel Gowon, who was now Chief of Staff, was also a former member of 4th Battalion, and some of his close friends like Lieutenant Colonel Pam were killed in January. He tried severally to speak with the northern soldiers who were becoming increasingly rebellious, but all his efforts did not yield the desired effects. Some of the soldiers expressed their displeasure at his involvement in Ironsi's government, while some turned their backs to him and defiantly sat down while he addressed them. Sensing the level of anger and resentment within the battalion, Gowon was wisely moving around with a heavy security detail. Ironsi did not help himself by not publicly explaining the circumstances of the January coup or the events that led him to assuming power.
The federal military government in Nigeria has taken over the administration of the country. Functions of the federal military government will be exercised by the Supreme Military Council, and details of which will be announced later.
Most of the Nigerian public did not know that some of the core January coup plotters were not Igbo. The existence of plotters from other ethnic groups was not revealed for almost 20 years, when some of the participants published inside accounts revealing the involvement of Yorubas and Northerners. The soldiers were already extremely agitated, and the government feared that releasing news regarding their dead senior colleagues would further escalate the tense atmosphere. Since the government was not providing much news on the events of January 15th, people decided to make up news themselves. This set the stage for rumors and wild conspiracy theories to thrive. This further aggravated an already tense situation for the government by permitting subversive elements to spread dangerously inaccurate and inciting news about the events of January 15th. One of such popular false accounts circulating among the Northerners claimed that the Prime Minister's corpse was doused with palm wine in a mark of disrespect. Such claims were widely circulated and believed largely by the uneducated northern public. Some northerners even suspected that Ojukwu had been one of the January plotters and that he was in Kaduna on the morning that Sardauna was murdered. The fact that Ojukwu was at his command several miles away in Kano, where he was seen by many of his men, did not dispel such stories. Further rumors claimed that Igbo soldiers were planning a second coup to finish the job of January. Rumor mongers even went as far as to generate a fake list of northern officers that were slated for assassination. Wild rumors about annihilating not just northern officers but all male northerners circulated. As outlandish as this seemed, some of these stories were genuinely believed by the northern people. Northern officers were also under intense pressure to avenge the murders of their people in January by mostly northern non-commissioned officers, politicians, and their families. Northerners accused their soldiers of cowardice and blamed them of standing idly while Igbos murdered their military and political leaders. Rumors were also rife that the soldiers imprisoned for their role in the January coup were being treated like royalty in prison. This was far from the truth. The imprisoned soldiers were brutally beaten daily, starved, and forced to do unimaginable things at gunpoint. The Supreme Military Council set up a board of inquiry where the coup plotters were interrogated extensively at length. The board consisted of British police officers, special branch police officers, and officers from the Nigerian army, including Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon and Lieutenant Colonel Nwawo. But despite these behind-the-scenes investigations, the SMC made no public announcement regarding when the plotters would be tried. Northern soldiers were not impressed by Ironsi's vague assurances that justice will be done, while Southerners viewed the majors as heroes who had removed the hated regime. The SMC agreed to court-martial the majors and commence trials in October. However, the decision was never made public, and Northern soldiers maintained the erroneous impression that Ironsi approved the majors' actions and did not intend on punishing them. By mid-1966, the suppressed rage of Northern NCOs over the January coup was at boiling point, and by July there was an unwritten consensus that there would be a rematch with their Igbo colleagues. With over 70% of the army's infantry constituted by Northerners, it was obvious that the rematch coup would have dire consequences. A group of junior Northern officers came together and composed an anonymous letter to the most senior Northern officer, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon, warning him that unless the senior Northern officers took action to avenge the murders of January within a certain deadline, the junior officers would take laws into their own hands. The junior officers were Lieutenants Sani Abacha, Abdullahi Sheleng, Haladu Hanania, Mohammed Jega, and Yakubu Dambo. Although senior Northern officers were involved in the planning of the revenge coup, most of the dirty work would be carried out by Northern NCOs and lieutenants. Pressure from the NCOs pushed many Northern officers into participation. They feared that the NCOs would take over the situation unless officers took responsibility for planning and execution. The de facto leader and coordinator of the revenge coup was Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed, and assisted by Majors Martin Adamu and Theophilus Danjuma. They were all under 30 years old. Plotting by the Northern officers was carried out almost openly. Their anger and hostility towards their Igbo colleagues was such that they made little effort to conceal their intentions. One Lieutenant Colonel Madiebu witnessed one of these many meetings by the Northern officers and made an effort to report the situation to Ironsi. Unaware of the danger lurking, Ironsi waved it off as a mere rumor, and Madiebu was reprimanded for rumor mongering. The plotters also had moles in Agui Ironsi's entourage who monitored his every move. Ironsi had entrusted his security to Northern officers such as Major Danjuma and Major Walby, who had now defected and were among the core conspirators planning to eliminate him. The commanding officer of the Abeokuta garrison was one Lieutenant Colonel Gabriel Okonwezi. Late on the night of July 28th, he had received a tip-off from Army headquarters indicating that another coup was imminent. In order to avoid a repeat of the January killings, he summoned all the officers in his unit to the officers' mess for a meeting. He informed them about the impending coup plot and urged any officer with information to step forward. He also decided preemptively to issue his soldiers with arms and ammunition so that they could defend themselves if the need arose. In response to this, an Igbo NCO went around waking up other soldiers with instructions for them to go and collect arms. The fact that the NCO was Igbo only created more problems. The already paranoid northern NCOs who were not present at the meeting suspected foul play and assumed that the meeting with Okonwezi was a chance for the Igbo soldiers to strike first and eliminate them. They decided to preemptively get organized and armed. They informed the unit's armorer, who happened to be a northern NCO, to ensure that arms are only issued to northern soldiers. While Okonwezi continued to address the meeting in the officers' mess, northern NCOs led by one Sergeant Sabo Kwali stormed the officers' mess and shot Okonwezi dead on the spot. After shooting Okonwezi, all hell broke loose and everyone scampered for safety. The Northerners took control of Abeokuta garrison and conducted a door-to-door search for Igbo soldiers. The rampaging Northern soldiers delegated the most senior Northern officer, Captain Mohammed Rimawa, telephoned Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon and informed him of what had happened. Lieutenant Colonel Gowon in return started phoning the various army formations around the country, warning them to be alert. However, his call to these other army units only spurred Northern soldiers in those units to action. Word got to Lagos about the mutiny happening in Abeokuta when a member of the Abeokuta garrison, Lieutenant Roland Ogbonna, who had been out of the barracks when trouble started, found his way to a police station and telephoned 2nd Battalion to inform them of what he presumed was an isolated mutiny in his unit. Ogbonna's call was received by one Lieutenant Nathan Nuhu, a junior Northern officer who was also one of the planners. Lieutenant Nuhu informed his superior, Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed, who took that as a signal to flag off his plans. He immediately ordered troops to head out from Abeokuta to provide reinforcements for their coup conspirators in Lagos and Ibadan, respectively. A group of the Abeokuta mutineers arrived at the 2nd Battalion in Ikeja in the early hours of July 29th, further ignite an already tense situation. The coup in Ikeja was coordinated by Lieutenant Nuhu and Lieutenant Nasarawa, who managed affairs until their superior, Lieutenant Colonel Murtala, arrived on the scene. Igbo soldiers were pre-selected for elimination. Many of them were accosted and shot dead in their quarters. Many others were accosted as their rules for morning physical training were murdered. The Ikeja airport also turned into an execution ground under the command of the dreaded Sergeant Paul Dixon. Igbo soldiers were identified and summarily executed. In Ibadan, Aguiyi Ironsi received a call from the Commissioner of Police in the early hours of July 29th, informing him of the mutiny in Abeokuta and the murder of Lieutenant Colonel Okonwezi and other Igbo officers. Ironsi's host, Lieutenant Colonel Fadri, suggested that they leave the State House for safety, but Ironsi was not having any of that. From a police station in Abeokuta, Lieutenant Roland placed a call to 4th Battalion Ibadan to inform them about the mutiny in his unit. The phone call was answered by one Lieutenant Garba Dada, a northern officer who was also in support of the coup. Lieutenant Dada then proceeded to inform his boss, Major T.Y. Danjuma. Together they phoned Abeokuta garrison to get more information on the message they had just intercepted. Emboldened by the confirmation of the outcome in Abeokuta, Major Danjuma mobilized about 24 of his northern soldiers and proceeded to the State House. Danjuma was the principal staff officer at Army Headquarters in Lagos and part of Ironsi's entourage. He lined up all the security guards on duty at the State House and disarmed them. Next, he ordered all the Igbo officers to leave while the northern officers were asked to remain. After being briefed by Danjuma, the northern soldiers switched sides and joined Danjuma's men. The northern soldiers, now reinforced by Danjuma's 24 men, surrounded the State House as instructed. According to Danjuma's account, by sheer coincidence, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon placed a call to State House at that very moment. The call connected to a telephone immediately adjacent to Danjuma's location. Danjuma picked up the call, and the following is a reenactment of the conversation between the two men as described by Danjuma himself.
Hello?
Yes?
I want to speak to the brigade commander. I want to speak to Colonel Njoku.
May I know who is speaking?
My name is Gowan, Yakubu Gowan.
Ranka Dede, this is Yakubu Danjuma.
Yakubu, what are you doing there? Where are you?
I am in the State House, sir.
Where is the brigade commander?
He is not around.
Have you heard what happened in Abeokuta?
Yes, I heard, sir. That is why I am here. We are about to arrest the Supreme Commander. The alternative is that the Igbo boys who carried out the January coup will be released. Tit for tat since we killed their own officer.
Good Lord. Can you do it?
Yes, sir. We have the place surrounded, sir.
Alright. But for goodness sake, we have had enough bloodshed. There must be no bloodshed.
We are only here to arrest him, sir. There will be no bloodshed.
Good.
Inside the State House, Ironsi made several calls to different army formations around the country and spoke with many officers to advise them of his predicament. He also made several attempts to be evacuated from the State House with a helicopter, but all his efforts were unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Danjuma and the now mutinous guards took position outside the State House, quietly arresting aides. Ironsi's driver and a member of the medical corps were among some of the detainees. Having been in position outside the State House for several hours, the NCOs under Danjuma grew increasingly impatient and urged him to attack the building with high-caliber weapons. A myth had grown around Agui Ironsi and his ability to disappear after he escaped the January coup. The NCOs were nervous that he would disappear and mobilize troops to counter them like he did the majors in January. But Danjuma resisted and contented himself quietly arresting people that were seen coming out of the State House. Ironsi and Faji sent aides from the State House to go outside and assess the situation of things, not realizing that some of the men they were sending out and to whom they had entrusted their safety were in support of the mutineers. They would return and falsely inform the State House occupants that all was well. Agui Ironsi and Faji were becoming increasingly worried. Some of the aides they had sent to investigate had simply disappeared and not returned. After some time, Lieutenant Colonel Faji decided to go outside and investigate for himself. Once outside, he was promptly arrested by Danjuma and his men. Faji agreed to lead Danjuma to Ironsi after getting an assurance that no harm will come to him. According to Danjuma's accounts, he had to overrule a chorus of NCOs who did not want Faji to be allowed to go back inside. They only agreed on the condition that about half a dozen of them were allowed to enter with Danjuma and Faji. Escorted with the now hostage Faji, Danjuma and his troop entered the State House, disarmed Ironsi's personal security details, and then proceeded to the first floor, where Agui Ironsi had been waiting for Faji to return. Major T.Y. Danjuma saluted his supreme commander and then informed him that he was placing him under arrest. An astonished Ironsi tried to make sense of the situation, but Danjuma reiterated his resolve to arrest him, citing Ironsi's poor handling of the January coup plotters as the main reason for his arrest. An argument broke out between Danjuma and Ironsi, while Faji repeatedly reminded Danjuma of the assurance of safety he had given. Eventually, Ironsi, Faji, and two other aides were led out with their hands tied behind their backs with a telephone wire. According to Danjuma's account of the events that followed, some junior officers along with the NCOs lost patience with him for not ordering Ironsi's summary elimination. They were frightened that Ironsi would use juju to escape unless he was immediately neutralized. They snatched Ironsi and Faji away from Danjuma and hurriedly loaded them into a jeep driving off in a convoy. Major General Agui Ironsi and his host, Lieutenant Colonel Faji, were taken to their final destination, where they were brutally beaten, interrogated, and eventually shot dead. Back at Fort Battalion Ibadan, commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Joe Akahan lost control of his men. The soldiers that murdered Ironsi and Faji returned to the barracks and joined their colleagues to round up Igbo soldiers and execute them. Emboldened by the successful mutiny in Abeokuta and the news of Ironsi and Faji's capture and elimination in Ibadan, northern soldiers across some of the army formations, including Kaduna and Lagos, also mobilized, rounded up their Igbo colleagues and murdered them.